So we have some breaking news. Ipsos Reuters just released a new poll. It's the first poll conducted after the recent Iowa debate for the 2020 Democratic presidential primaries. And yet again, it's a solid poll for Bernie Sanders. And that's for a variety of reasons. First, the top line numbers again have Bernie Sanders in first place. Bernie Sanders is at 20%. Right behind him is Joe Biden with 19. In a distant third is Elizabeth Warren with 12th. And no one else has more than 10%. But Michael Bloomberg is in fourth with 9%. And Pete Buttigieg is right behind him with 6%. At the end of the day, this mirrors the last poll showing Bernie Sanders with a narrow lead over Joe Biden. That's incredibly important because it's showing yet again that this is becoming a two-horse race between those two candidates. When you're talking about a 1 or 2 point deficit or lead, you're effectively statistically tied, but the gap between first and second and then Warren back in third is rather substantive, and it shows that likely those are the two to beat, at least right now. And it's also good news for Bernie because he's showing consistent growth. What this Reuters Ipsos poll is noting is that over the past few weeks, only Michael Bloomberg, who of course is new to the race, and Bernie Sanders have demonstrated growth each and every week. Bernie Sanders and Bloomberg have gone up a little bit at a time, whereas Warren, Buttigieg, and Biden are more or less stagnant. And so Bernie Sanders has some momentum on his side. And one big question with this poll in particular, with a lot of the post-debate polls, was going to be what are the effects of the Elizabeth Warren smear on Bernie Sanders. What she said before the debate, but also during the debate and even after the debate, what was that going to do to Bernie Sanders' numbers or Elizabeth Warren's numbers? Was one of them going to see a benefit? Was one of them going to get hurt? Was Joe Biden going to benefit and both of them suffer? And what we see is that it didn't seem to have much of an effect at all. It didn't hurt Bernie, it didn't hurt Liz, but neither did it help them or anyone else. First, Bernie Sanders did gain in this week's poll, but not a huge amount. And what this particular poll indicates is that the ratio of women's support for Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren remains more or less the same, meaning that in general, or with women in particular, Bernie Sanders' alleged comments haven't really moved the needle. All of this is very positive because at the end of the day, that entire debate, the days running up to it, in the media, with other candidates, it was all spent attacking Bernie Sanders. I noted that in my post-debate coverage. I called it a rigged debate, and I stand by that. I said that Bernie Sanders in that debate had 8 opponents. The 5 people on the stage, and then the 3 moderators. I stand by that. And despite the rigged process, despite the loaded questions, despite the lies and the goading and the baiting by Elizabeth Warren and others, Bernie Sanders is not only holding his own, but he's growing. His support is rising. He continues to grow each and every week, and he continues to show that he's the only one competitive with the other frontrunner, Joe Biden. So when Bernie Sanders is able to withstand all of this and not only resist falling back, but keep pushing ahead, it shows you that he's strong. Now, it should be noted with this poll that there's a lot of people left undecided. There's a lot of people who haven't picked anyone, as many as 20%, meaning that undecideds are almost as big as the 2 frontrunners. That leaves room for everyone to grow. And it should also be noted that there's a good amount of people who have sort of parked their vote, but may move to another person if things change. But what earlier polling has at least indicated is that Bernie Sanders is among the best at having an enthusiastic and dedicated supporter base. Put another way, when somebody supports Bernie, they're unlikely to shift to somebody else. And that's a real strength because if a good chunk of the field is undecided, but you have a high proportion of locked-in supporters, It means that as the process goes forward, you have an advantage when it comes to peeling off voters from other candidates, be it Biden or Warren or Buttigieg or whoever else. If Bernie has the enthusiasm and dedication and loyalty advantage, that could serve him well as people start to drop out, as other people have good days and bad days, and as people look for new candidates to support or new ideas to champion. Bernie Sanders has that rock solid base, and that's what you need for a marathon process, which this primary may end up being, given that Biden and Bernie are neck and neck, and given that there are candidates like Bloomberg and Buttigieg and Warren with decent levels of support overall, and may have the opportunity to win some delegates. So all in all, this is a very good poll for Bernie Sanders. It wasn't a whole lot of movement. Bernie really didn't open up a huge lead over Biden. It's not a ground-shattering poll. But in the context of a week where Bernie Sanders has been lied about and attacked and smeared, not only by the neoliberal media and the neoliberal wing of the Democratic Party, but by one of his supposed friends and allies in the progressive movement, aka Elizabeth Warren, that he withstood all of that and continues to move forward is a really, really positive sign. And it shows that Bernie Sanders is a battle-tested candidate. And I think it's demonstrating that he's ideally poised to withstand the battering ram that's going to be Trump in the general campaign.